episode 3 of the Next Gen TCG podcast. My name is Nick. We have my co-host Zach here. We are here for another weekly episode of all your Pokemon TCG news, the hobbies, collecting, how to buy, how to sell. A lot of promises that probably will not be fulfilled, but we'll try our best to entertain you guys for the next hour or so. Right, Zach?
Yeah, you got it, Tetra. Happy to be here with you. And let's have fun, man.
Yeah, tremendous support. Thank you so much for your support the first 2 episodes. Before we get into it, you guys probably noticed that we are testing out a little bit of a different layout this time. We're trying out a different podcast software. So let us know what you think, if you prefer this format versus the other format. There's pros and cons to each. Some look better, some give us better options for editing. But overall, just let us know how you think of this podcast compared to the first 2 episodes. And we'll move right into market trends. So market trends, first off, we'll start off with WotC. And basically, I'm going to let Zach take over this because he is our WotC guru and where the market is at.
Way too nice. I feel like I got my earmuffs on today. I got the headset, mixing it up a little bit. So styling, profiling.
It's professional, man. That's how you run a professional podcast. Everyone wears headphones.
We bring you the best. That's what the goal is. Yeah. So what we think is we're basically at the floor of WotC. So if you look at the Japanese card prices, you look at the modern, you look at all the different things that are sort of moving in the market, and it's like, why is WotC so low? And so I believe, and I know Tetra, you feel the same way, that it's like WotC shouldn't be as low as it is. And, everyone's talking about the Mario Pikas and the ponchos and it's going up, and we're saying sell into the hype, but it's like, really when you're selling to the hype, you got to be looking at what to buy, and we think buying at the low for WotC is really kind of a strategic market play.
The main topic for this podcast is how to make money in the Pokemon hobby, so we're gonna save the deep dive into WotC a little bit further along. But yeah, I'd say just loosely, if you have a ton of capital right now, WotC is the set, especially first edition base, fossil, jungle. That is the set, the majority. If you talk to like 99% of all collectors who got into this market, most of them got into it because they wanted WotC first edition. So the prices right now are very low. So I think like if you were going to buy in terms of long-term investment, obviously don't try to buy and flip next day. But if you can hold for a couple hours, I think buying into WotC right now is a pretty good bet. So that's pretty much it. I think, like I said, we'll get into more WotC a little bit later. But Zach alluded to this as well, is that I think the Japanese market is due probably within the next 2 months for some sort of market correction. We talked about it a couple podcasts ago about how if you like a card, there's probably a reason why you like the card, and long term that card will hold its value, monetary value, obviously. But with Poncho Pikachu's, Mario Pika's selling at 7,500, I think that if you were trying, Zach says this all the time, sell into the hype, I think it'd be a good time to try to unload those cards right now, because I think there's going to be a very significant market correction on some of the more readily available and easy grade promos from Japanese. The Mario Pikas, like, you can pretty much guarantee you're getting a 10 straight out of the box with those cards. Same with the Poncho Pikas, very easy grades. I think I posted the pop report in the last episode with those Poncho Pika series. All of them are over 1,000 in PSA 10, so that doesn't make any sense to me as a person who is into this hobby, how that price can possibly sustain. So I think that if you haven't already sent off or auctioned off some of those Japanese promos within the next month or so, I think you should probably sell into the hype or sell into the wave.
I totally agree, Tetra. I mean, you were here in 2016, 2017 when you could just buy these, readily available. And it's like you go on eBay and you just get whatever you want. And there were so many. And then the price went up to 100, then to 200. It's like there were always so many. And when you think of the market cap of a card and you try to rationalize the collectible, that, as the price sort of goes up, there's all these people that would sell here, sell here, sell here, sell here. Well, there's not everyone that's in Pokemon every day like we may be. There's some people, they come back for a month, they come back for 3 months or 6 months. They say, oh my gosh, Pancho Pikachu is like thousands and thousands of dollars. I would have sold it $500. And you're like, dude, $500 was 2 years ago, man. You're crazy. And so you have all these people that eventually they'll drive that price back down. And so it's just, when you look at what the market cap has to be, it's just so much money that's not in the hobby right now that has to enter the hobby, that has to buy at these top prices to sustain it. And, if the market shows the trends it usually does, it's just going to be very hard to sustain this for the long term.
Once again, this is all personal opinions, not professional opinions. We are not your we're not your investment banker, so do not, if you take a haircut on a couple of cards or the market continues to stonk beyond what we predict, then don't blame us. We're just saying from our personal experience of what we know about the hobby. That's where we're at. So that's pretty broad range of what's going on in English as well as Japanese. There's actually a lot of really big, interesting cards being auctioned in Heritage's big monthly auction this month that just got literally released today as we record on the Monday. So I'll let Zach talk about a couple. I'll talk about a couple, and then we'll see what you guys think.
Talk about some bangers of cards. I mean, so Heritage has been kind of showing these off a little bit, bring them to shows. You could, if you're at a show, you can look at it in person. And if you're lucky enough, maybe you can even hold it. And so today was the first day. Actually, we're recording on Monday. So Monday, June 19th is the first day that these cards actually you could bid on them. And one of the top cards in the auction, in my opinion, is a 2000 number 2 trainer. It's a number 101 trainer. And if you look, it's crazy because the guy who actually placed second in the event is on the card. I mean, think about it. It's a Pokemon card with someone on the card. Like, if you were lucky enough, this could have been you if you were back in the day and living in Japan. And this card, surprisingly enough, already has a $57,000 bid, which brings up to about $70K or so on a day one bid. I mean, Tetra, what do you think about that? $70K bid?
It's not surprising because it's a 1-to-1 card.
Yeah.
Plus whatever copies a Pokemon employee wanted to pocket as well. But this one is the actual one that's owned by the person who won, or it was the original card that's owned by the trainer because it actually has the trainer's name in the top left-hand corner. So at that point, when you're talking scarcity in a 1-to-1, it's basically whatever someone is willing to pay. I found it interesting, though, that they decided to go with CGC as the grading company.
So why are people grading CGC? That's a really good question. So why are some of the highest cards going to CGC? I think there's a few factors there to sort of break down, and you could honestly ask the people who are grading it to maybe bring one of them on the show and say, hey, why'd you grade that with CGC? Maybe they'll be kind enough to tell us. But long story short, in my opinion, PSA, if they have a big card, they're going to charge you a $5,000 fee or a $10,000 fee to get that card graded. So if you have a card that's a 101, it could be a PSA 6, it could be a CGC 10. You're really buying it for the card in itself and not necessarily the grade. You're buying it for the authenticity piece. But at the same time, if you could save $10,000 grading a card just by going to CGC, I think that's honestly what's swaying a lot of people. It's just competition brings good things. And so I think, if PSA could find a way to compete with CGC's pricing on the biggest cards, I think maybe we would see more cards going back to PSA. But when the grade is a little less important, those are some of the instances I think that maybe people try to save a little money on the fee. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, did you see anything in between the lines?
I don't know, because at this price point, I feel like that's kind of like FU money at this point. It's kind of, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Everyone has their own grading preference, and the reason why they decided to. Some people prefer the cases. I've never actually held a CGC card in my hand. Some people, from what I've been told, the CGC cases are great. They feel like very substantial in your hand. But it was just for me. It's just for an outside collector. I'm a little bit OCD with things as well. If I would try to get. Yeah, I'd want to get it. I'd want to get it into a PSA case just so it lines up perfectly in my bank storage box and it doesn't look like an outlier. But it is a very interesting card. I'm really curious to see where it ends. Do you have a price you think it's going to finish at?
What's crazy, I'm just surprised how much it took off recently. And I've seen some of the other, like the Neo #1 trainer, the #2. I've seen some of the other cards that are similar sell recently. And this card's already breaking past the upper echelon of some of those different
Hmm.
price points that are going privately. So if you think about it being a #101, it has a lot of color. It's a really nice card. It's in good shape. It has a lot of other factors sort of going for it. I could see it just being one of those that sort of breaks free and kind of sets its own price, because unless it's a 2/2 or a 3/3, or Ken Sugimori's got an extra in his back pocket or something. I mean, is the extra copies you were alluding to earlier. I mean, is it going to get the 101 price? We'll see. I mean, do you think this could be an extra copy?
No, I think it's probably like originally the
True
owner's
101.
copy. True 101 slash whatever extra copies there are.
Yeah.
I've never found the appeal, like just in terms of pure aesthetics. I've never found the appeal of these cards, just because first off they have like like an actual person on the card,
Yeah.
and it just seems very out of place. If I was a person who was kind of like outside of the hobby, I
Yeah.
would just think to myself, like, some kid just photoshopped himself into a picture on a Pokemon card, and just for like fan artwork and that type of something like along those lines. I wouldn't have, I like my at first glance, I would not think that was an actual legitimate card. So it's not something that I have a strong affinity for in terms of trophy cards, but I respect the fact of its rarity, and obviously at the price it's at already, there are other people who are very interested in it as well. So I'm just talking about my person. If I were to think, if I had the
Mhm.
capital and I had choices of buying these expensive items, this would probably be down the list personally for me.
I think to go back to answer your question, to pick a price, I'd probably say between 120 and 130. Just when you have this strong of an offering up front, there's people that want it. And sometimes when you get to these markets, the people that want it, the price isn't as relevant.
Yeah.
So whether it's worth that, who knows? But whether two people really want to pay that, it's going to be tough to say. I thought the price it's at now would be a great showing for it. So just seeing it and seeing the interest, it being a 101, there's no other way you could buy that card unless you got it today. Then yeah, that's just my guess. Higher, lower? What are you thinking?
I'm at about a one. Yeah, about where you are, 120ish. Is
120?
probably a solid bit. There are a lot of other cool cards as well. There's a 9.5 CGC Snap Gyarados, which is really interesting. Definitely one of the highest graded Snap cards that I have ever seen before. Generally, inherently, all Snap cards are very off-centered.
But another huge card out there is that Trophy Kangaskhan PSA 10. And talk about a card that just has so much sort of hobby allure and hobby hype sort of around it in general. To me, it feels like, Scrolls Out Boys or Who's Got the Key, or, you have these little niche groups that are so proud of it. And the Kang, I think it's one of those you hold in person. It's pink and it's beautiful and it pops. And those of you that may not be aware, I'm not the best with colors. So sometimes it's hard for me to see all the different little colors and things. But when I held it in person, it was crystal clear, like bright pink. And I was like, whoa, this is a beautiful card. So definitely one to check out as well.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the cards that like I would love to add to my collection. When I was actually getting into the hobby, like getting seriously into hobby, I was like seriously looking for one to add. And at that time, they were based everywhere I was researching. They were pretty much on the same level as the price of PSA 10 Precision Zard, around that 25 to 30k range. That didn't make sense to me when I was at that time, because I just thought I could see around like 10ish.
Yeah.
And then I talked to people as well. Some people asked me would I trade a Zard for a Trophy Kangaskhan, and I said no, just because the Zard is just kind of like the iconic card for the hobby. It's like basically the mascot for the hobby. Anytime you see like a magazine cover that's talking about Pokemon cards, it's either that or the Illustrator. With the Trophy Kangaskhan, it's kind of, you have to dig a little bit deeper in terms of understanding its value. It's a beautiful card, and it's a beautiful card though. I would love to own one, and this one actually like a pretty clean copy.
You know what's crazy in the past? I've been offered Trophy Kang for a Zard like several occasions. Like the price I remember was like 8K, like clean swap. And my first thought was like, who's trying to get? And remember, like my experience with the hobby is all Watsy. It's not the trophies and this and that. Like I wasn't like cool enough to be there. And so my thought was like, who's trying to give me a Kangaskhan for a Zard? I'm not getting scammed. Like, what is this? This is nuts. In my head, I thought of the Gym Challenge 2, like Kangaskhan. I was like, dude, I've got a couple of those. Like, I pulled those out of packs. Like, of course I've got that. And then, like, it was like a year later, I was like, uh-oh, like trophy versus common card.
Yeah, it's. I think at that time I valued it in my head around 10,000. When Zard was at 30, I valued it at around 10. So it is what it is. They're very limited, so the price is whatever someone wants to sell at. So, but yeah,
we got the Kamiya auto set graded PSA 9 and 10. So someone had a private signing, I assume, with Kamiya, where a lot of the artworks, which surprisingly, if there's an artwork you really like and you go back and you look at different cards, you're like, oh, it's all by the same artist. So you have like the Skyridge Alakazam, the Skyridge Gyarados, some of the most like beautiful cards that I love from E-Series, and then going through like as an older collector and looking, I was like, oh, these are all by Kamiya. Like, wow, that's amazing. So the one thing that I'm sad about is like there's no sketches on the cards. Like it's like, could you draw like a Gyarados? But if you look at the date, it's kind of a little bit before like a lot of that stuff actually happened. But if you look at the grades, I mean, Tetra, do you see those grades? Those are big grades.
Yeah, they chose like extremely mint copies to submit. I'm always worried about those type of things because I worry like the autograph signers just gonna like do something reckless with them, But they are Japanese as well, so the card stock is a little bit better, so they would hold up a little bit better as well. But yeah, definitely in terms like some of the most iconic artwork from E-Series, like the Mewtwo as well. The Gyarados is like straight up fire. And then we talked about the Expedition Blastoise last week, so it's a really cool set. We've gotten very in depth of our market analysis of where we think autographs are at this point, but this person obviously was very dedicated and they chose really good cards, chose minty cards. So it'd be cool to see where these finish at.
So here's the big question with this lot. If you own these cards, would you have consigned them as a lot or would you have consigned them individually?
If it were me, I'd just sell them individually. Personally, myself, I would not do the whole lot thing because you're going to get people who don't really care about the EX or Maldo. You know what I mean? Kabutops is not a very popular Pokemon either. Obviously, you have your hitters like Umbreon, your Mewtwo's, but does anyone really care about Walrein?
I don't know, Walrein.
So I think this is more of like, in terms of like collection, this is more of just like a personal thing. It seems like this is more of a personal collection, or someone had ideas for a personal collection, but I think overall, I think you're better off probably just going individual cards and this type of thing.
I think you hit it perfect, Tetra. I think that was the perfect answer. I think without jumping too far ahead to the buying and selling section, there are a lot of people in this hobby that make money on buying lots and breaking them up and selling them individually and then doing very, very well on that. So you have this sort of like true collector. I want to keep it together. The owner needs to preserve it and keep it. And like, it just needs to go to one person. When in reality, there are people out there that are going to see the value in that, and they may be the one that buys it, and then they'll just re-auction them all individually, and they'll make a free 10K or whatever that margin may be. So I think when you get to stuff like this, selling individually is a better option. There are cases where selling as a lot may be the way to go, but most of the times in between, when you break up a lot, you're going to maximize the value of each individual card. You're also expanding your buyer pool, so you have more buyers that are able to buy it from prices. And if that person really wants them all, we make them pay for each card. So I think you hit it right on the head, Tetra.
No, thanks, buddy. So that is going on at Heritage. We also have some really big news. Is that Zach got to hold this card at Card Party, but the really big news is that Zach actually has been commissioned for an Illustrator consignment. So take it away.
Indeed, indeed. So it's one of those sort of magical moments where there's only so many illustrators out there. And at the show, we were walking around and anyone took a picture. We said, hey, just wait a little bit, to show a photo. We're still working out the details and logistics. And ultimately, the owner has decided to part ways with the card. And so it's a BGS9 Illustrator. And if you're interested, or if you want to see pictures, or if you're a buyer, I'm more than happy to reach out and talk to you about possibly facilitating a sale. And if you live somewhere cool and you want me to fly it out, please demand that I come see you, because I would love to go hang out on a beach for a little bit and swap straters.
One of the very few moments in the hobby where you will have an Illustrator readily accessible to you, because a lot of the other copies are kind of held right now. So it's a very rare occasion that you have an Illustrator in this hobby where anyone can buy it, no questions asked, and you name your price. Well, Zach will come back at a price, and hopefully you guys can work out a deal.
It's surreal, man. I feel like when you have it in your hands, it almost feels like a little light comes on. And it's like, hey, are you dreaming? Are you dreaming? It's like an Illustrator. It's so crazy. And I remember at card party, there was like a little kid, and I was like, hey, I told the dad, hey, I just want to show him something kind of cool. I pulled it out and flipped it over, and the kid was holding it. He was like, oh, this is kind of cool. The dad's like, oh my gosh, that's an Illustrator. And I was like, yes, it is. It is an Illustrator. And then
so the father knew, but the kid was kind of clueless. He just thought, oh, this is a weird looking card.
He was probably, 5 or 6 years old. But I thought, hey, it's a moment the dad can share with his son. And, don't tell him it's coming. Just let it happen. And then they'll always remember that moment. And I don't always have an Illustrator in my pocket. So it's just, I'm very, very fortunate the owner trusts me to help him with this sale.
You've had a lot of things in your pocket. You've had Illustrators. You walked around New York with some Zards, PSA 10 Zards. You just... I'd be like a stressed out. I'd just be a mess if I had something like that in my pocket. It's just
I do stress about security, and it does give me a little bit of anxiety. But I believe if you pretend like there's nothing in your pocket, then you don't give off the impression that you have something in your pocket.
Right on.
We're going to get into the main topic segment of the podcast today, guys. And we're going to start off with a hot topic, which is how do you make money in the hobby? I think a lot of people come into the hobby, they want to build a collection, find things to grow. And then some people want to go full time. Like maybe our friends, Dan, Got to Catch 'em All, Nick, Old School Pokemon, Rusty, TCG Gaming, all those guys. And I think they're definitely people to model after and work towards if you're trying to do. But if you take their business practices and you apply them to your everyday sort of collecting at home and buying and selling life, there's ways that you can collect and build a cool collection and also make a little bit along the way.
So I think I think we need to approach it as like, if you were literally just jumping into this hobby first time, no one knows who you are, like how to baseline, how do you make money in this hobby? And I think what's important thing to understand is, first off, understanding what your overall goal is when you're buying and selling Pokemon cards. Are you trying to buy and sell Pokemon cards to just fund your own collection on the side, or is your long-term goal to do this permanently as a full-time job to basically supplement your entire income? I think you need to establish that first, because I want people to understand is that if you want to do this full-time, you're not going to be dealing with some of the sexiest cards in the hobby, because there's not enough of them to sustain a full-size income, a full-time income.
Not enough lilies? Right? Is that what you're saying?
there's not enough lilies to provide your income and put food on your table. From what I gather in talking to a lot or listening to a lot of other people who do this full-time, it's a lot of bulk, a lot of modern bulk, a lot of min-maxing. It's not the funnest thing for me anyways. If I were to approach it, it's the undesirable aspect of the hobby, dealing with modern. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think you're giving the viewers a really good sort of way to approach selling. And I think, if you're brand new in the hobby, and you got to identify your goals. And so if your goal is you have a childhood collection, you want to sell it, and you don't want to do anything with Pokemon in the future, you should absolutely find someone with a brand, with a name, with someone who buys and sells all the time. Let them sell it for you. They're just going to maximize the return for you, and they're going to do really, really well. But if you're someone who wants to stay in the hobby and you want to buy as part of an income, and you want to grow, and you want to try to go full time, or if you want to do something where you can do it consistently, then probably the number one advice I could give you is to sort of build your relationships and your network within the hobby. Get to know all the different people. Everyone in the hobby is very, very friendly. Create an Instagram account, create a Facebook, create, Twitter, TikTok, whatever sort of medium you're in, and then build your network. And so if you think of me as one person, I can only talk to so many people in a day. And I constantly will just cycle through people I know and just talk to, catch up with, but I can't talk to, thousands of people every day. There's just not enough time. So if you kind of build your own network and your own sort of, connections and your relationships, you'll eventually find people that are interested in the same cards as you, the same sets, the same era, maybe the same sort of grade. If you guys all collect PSA 8s, or maybe you love the CGC 8.5s, I mean, there's got to be someone out there that loves those. And so once you kind of build that sort of segment with the different groups of people, you're going to create your own network, and you're going to be able to have that sort of those relationships that you can develop and turn into something where you just have kind of a machine. Now, all the skills and the art and all that come with it, and it's very difficult to grow those, but by creating some sort of reputable presence for yourself, that's going to go much further than any one single eBay sale will.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the idea of flipping versus holding. I think we're pretty much like at the market right now, like flipping cards is not a long-term business practice that you should probably try to base your income model on, just because, yes, you will occasionally have those winners where you'll buy a card, you find it for a good deal, and you'll be able to flip it the next day for like $100 profit. But the market, based on with like social media and like be able to search for like prior sales history and just overall the amount of things that are being sold weekly is just astronomical. You have PWCC's weekly auction. You have these special auctions as well. They're premier auctions as well as heritage auctions. Pretty much, unless you're talking about waifus, the market has a pretty good idea of what everything is at. So less and less you're gonna, unless something's just like blatantly mislabeled or just completely undervalued by someone who's probably been out of the hobby for a long time. Those hits are not going to happen that often, and there's also like inherent risk. Let's just say you buy a card and there's opportunity cost as well. Let's just say you make like $200 off a card somehow. Then you have your eBay fees cut into your margins, and then you have the risk of selling the card again. Let's just say that card gets lost or something happens during transit, and then you're out that money. Flipping is long term is not a solution. We talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, where we kind of think WotC is basically at the floor right now. I'd say if I had like $250 to $1 million right now, I think WotC would probably be a good investment. But saying that, I'm talking about long-term holding. You would have to hold those cards probably 3 to 4 years before you see significant return on your investment. And I'll be honest with you, like my return on investment for WotC cards has been fantastic. But you have to keep in mind, I've held these cards for like, what now? 6, 7, 8 years
through the
and
boom.
The returns, and it's through the, and it's like, and holding those cards, like the return on investment of those cards is so much better than anything that you would get from a bank. So I think if you're willing to ride the wave and hold on to a long time, WotC is good at this point based on where we're at.
And this is not financial advice. This is not,
so it's not financial advice. Not financial advice.
It's a good investment, boys. Let's all go in. Scrolls out. No, I think there's a few investing strategies that you can sort of live behind and you can think about, and you can like just understand. Again, not advice, but just something to think about. So why did everyone do really well in 2020? Why did everyone do really well in 2021? It wasn't because like you had a killer sale like once or twice. It was because the pie got bigger and bigger and bigger. The market grew. There were more people in the hobby. Everything went up. And so, if you're that card shop that started in 1970, and when you get to 2010, like, of course it's worth more. The value what you have went up. And so as more and more people come to the hobby, and the Pokemon grows as an IP, as a brand, they do a movie, they do Pokemon Go. Anytime these things happen, you have more people who are now buyers and sellers. and the whole thing grows. So if you're trying to come into the hobby and you're trying to buy that card for 10K and sell it for 15K, and you do that once a year, like that's great. You made 5K, but you made 5K that year. Whereas the person who is constantly rotating capital, they're constantly, buying and selling, and they're doing 100 of those in a year with the same capital, which is hard to do with shipping and all that. But let's say they do it 30 times a year with the same capital, they're going to outperform you, even if they're only making 5 to 10% to 20% per card, simply because if you make 10% 10 times versus 50% once, I mean, who's doing better?
Yeah.
Math.
Which is math. I think one thing that people really need to understand is that when we're talking about doing this full time, it is an absolute grind, and you're gonna have to be doing a lot of movement of a ton of product at very thin margins. I don't have the numbers, but I know that you talk to people who do this full time, and the margins are absolutely insane.
Razor thin. I remember when Rusty started out, he was selling cards and he was making like 10 cents a card or like 5 cents a card. And people are like, Rusty, why are you doing that? And he's like, dude, you just gotta hustle, you gotta move. And look at where he is now. I mean, how many people are willing to, list a card on eBay, sell it, and only make a dime? I mean, think about the amount of hours that goes into just paying for like a Pepsi or something at a store.
I can only imagine like the effort of putting a listing up and making a margin of like a 10 cents on a card that would like infuriate me to no end. But you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Rusty's also the dude when I went to visit him for the first time. He was like, hold on, man, I'm changing my roof. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, I'm switching my roof. And then he comes into his card shop all hot and sweaty. And I was like, what do you mean, man? You're changing your roof? He's like, oh, up there, I was just, switching out, I was re-roofing or whatever the word is. So that's the type of hard worker it takes in the Pokemon market to sell bulk.
Well, Rusty's been everywhere. Like he's done basically everything. He's done the brick and mortar thing that unfortunately eventually had to shut down because it just wasn't profitable enough. So he's actually, I know a lot of people who come into the hobby and are like, I'm going to open a card shop. That's my dream goal, owning a brick and mortar store, and I'm going to operate it with all my friends, and we're going to sell Pokemon cards. And it's just, it doesn't work like that. Take it from Rusty, who is probably one of the biggest grinders out there. And he himself could not make a brick and mortar store work long term. I think we already talked about flipping, so maybe we'll just move on to the next one and what's going to make you actually successful in this hobby long run. We kind of talked about already, establishing good relationships with people, because despite what you may think, you do not know everything that's in the hobby. So I think general interest, the desire to learn more is going to basically make you successful in this hobby, because general interest is going to drive your participation in the hobby and your overall knowledge in the hobby, so you know exactly where the market's at. Zach has decades worth of experience in the hobby, has a pretty good idea of the prices for things, and he probably has and those general interests have led to many connections in the hobby as well.
I've got one quick question for you, Tetra. Do you own any GameStop? Do you own any GameStop stock? Because those diamond hands down there just seem to be a little heavy. All that holding you're doing.
Yeah, no. Just
no.
I didn't want when it's time to sell, I'll sell. I have a couple of cards coming up in the PWCC auction for next week. Next week's fixed weekly auction. So I'll take in my first paycheck from this hobby and actually make a profit on cards for the very first time next week. So very interested to see where that is. I am selling at probably the absolute worst time. We talked about earlier how Watsu is at its floor, like the Japanese market's cooling off, and then I'm sending in Lotto Zards that are gonna sell for like $2,500 when they maxed out like $8,000 like a year ago. But it is what it is. So I put 400 into a Lotto Zard. I'm happy to take home if it finishes it off at 2,500. It's cool with me.
I think you'll probably get 3,500 or so, but we'll see. Maybe you can break that 4K mark, but I don't know.
I don't think so.
So have you ever in your buying, I know you did a lot of like slab buys and you kind of had targeted buys, and it was always like whatever price offered you was always like half, but have you ever thought about doing like collection buyouts, like just going for like raw cards and saying, oh, there's a cool base set binder, like let me get that whole binder? Have you ever thought about
like the amount of collection buyouts. I actually have one here. I'll show you. I have one in the back.
Oh my gosh, is this real? I gotta pinch me. Gotta wake up here.
So I actually like these is I've done 2 collection buyouts, like 2 collection buys before, and like this is my. I gotta let's see here. Let's see. This is my Neo first edition binder. So I actually have so I saw this on eBay. This was like the entire collection of Neo, and I bought this collection out for like I think it was like $700.
Oh my gosh!
And then like I sent all the cards into PSA, and then yeah, so all the hollows are gone, but I still have all, and these were like super mint. Some of the hollows did end up coming back as a 10. But what I was trying to do is I was trying to chase some of the harder to grade Neo cards before. But I think like this is just I don't know how this auction stayed on eBay without anyone seeing it for the longest time. I think we were still at the price where like things were still reasonable. But binders are definitely one of my favorite things about this hobby. We'll get to that a little bit later. But I've only done 2 set buyouts before, and I didn't really hit anything super big out of it, but they're still fun to look at and fun to have.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, like collection buyouts are some of the best ways to grow and to build your sort of selling inventory and this and that, and you can kind of pick out the things you want. But the people that usually perform the best are the ones that sell everything. So you may have bought that binder, gone through and picked out a few you want to keep. But people who do the hobby full time, kind of the harsh truth, the harsh reality with doing Pokemon full time is you can't collect everything. You have to sell. And so you might have to dip into your collection and pick that one card out just because it's a low point in the hobby. We have the rises, the falls, and, if a lot of sales jobs, they'll make a lot of money one year and they'll make nothing the next year. And so Pokemon's very similar where, some years may be tighter. If things go up in perpetuity, you're just going to have people fall in the market. Out. Yeah, I mean, you're just going to attract everyone, and the margins are going to thin out. So you just aren't going to have that many people.
Yeah, we've been kind of long-winded here of the main topic of how to buy and sell and make money in this hobby, but the real answer is that there's just so many ways to do it, and there's just so many nuances to it that in order to do it, you just have to be in the hobby. And the best way to be in the hobby is just general interest in Pokemon. Just like your job in real life, you will perform a lot better if you actually enjoy your job. Yeah. So if you actually enjoy Pokemon, then the entire thing just becomes less grindy. But keep in mind that if this is your goal to do this full time, then there will be grinding aspects to this hobby.
Yeah, I think I also just want to throw out there that there's a place in the hobby for everyone, that everyone that buys and sells in the hobby isn't just one person that just buys cards, sells cards. Like there's people who have all these different sort of pieces of the hobby that sort of create the whole ecosystem. So I know Tetra doesn't like flipping, but there are people who do flip full time. They do lose money every now and then. They take big losses, but sometimes they have big wins. There are people who buy and hold and don't sell anything. There are people who buy collections, grade it, and piece it out. And there are people who say, hey, the hobby isn't just cards. The hobby is actually, cases and binders. And I want to sell Phantom Display, and I want to, create like a sticker you can put on something, or I want to get my own sleeves, or, I'm actually going to create a grading service where I'm not actually selling a product. I'm selling a service to the hobby. And so the hobby is this whole ecosystem. And if you think about all the different players in the hobby, you can find a place that you can participate that you're probably really, really good at. You just have to get enough experience to figure out where that place may be. And it may not be the guy buying and selling cards on eBay. It may be the guy facilitating a service or providing something else to the hobby that's a value add. So just think of it in that regard, and not just the buy a card, sell a card. There's a lot to it.
And we'll definitely touch more on that. It's an ever growing topic. And we'll definitely probably come back to this a little bit later. But if you have any more specific questions, as always, you can leave us a question. Leave Zach a question, because Zach is better suited to these types of questions than I am with my weighted GameStop bonds holding me down. But anyways, let's move on to the next thing. Is we want to move on to upcoming Pokemon events. Zach loves going to Pokemon events. If there are any Pokemon events, you will probably see Zach Gem Mid Pokemon there, and he'll probably have a loyal trail of fans following him around, so he'll be very easy to spot at these events. Don't you, Zach? Do you have a you got a posse of people going with you at these events or what?
No, I like chasing the Jolteons and stuff, and so I love just go to all the little booths and find the air cards and stuff. What's crazy to the events, like it's not the people at the events that go. It's a lot of times it's the vendors or the other creators or the collectors. Like a lot of times it's the people who are just at all the events, which is kind of surreal. Like I can walk around a venue and no one's gonna really say anything, but if Poker walks around a venue, like he cannot walk one step. And that's kind of a cool little cheat code to enjoy an event. So we'll see. But some of the events we do have coming up, and as a recurring theme in this podcast, we want to just highlight things that we think are important. And then eventually we want to get to the point where we give you enough notice. So if you are watching the podcast, Pokemon World is coming up, you do have enough time to plan that trip and go to it. We don't want to just announce it the week before, but actually if we're going to be there, and Tetra's going to maybe start coming to more events too, that you can be there with us. So the big event coming up is going to be the USA National Championships from June 30th to July 2nd. That's going to be in Columbus, Ohio at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So if you're not familiar with the National Championships, basically there's regional events all over the United States throughout the year. You have your local, which is in the card shop. The regional is kind of like a full region. They happen maybe a little less often, but then the national is kind of like the one event every year for your country you can go to, and you could be the USA champion or the second place or third place. They're going to have the same thing for Brazil and the UK and all these other places, and then those winners essentially get points, and then if you get enough points, which I believe it's 350 points, you get an invitation to the Worlds. And the World Championships this year, where are they at, Tetra?
Tokyo.
Hey. They're in Japan, and I cannot wait to go to Japan. It's going to be August, I think, 10th through 11th, 12th, 13th. I'll figure it out. I'm going to mess this up. So the Worlds is going to be from August 11th through 13th in Yokohama, which is right outside of Tokyo. It's about as close to Tokyo as you can get. And any players that have earned enough points, the 350 points, they get an invitation to go. They'll all get an extra pass, a spectator pass, so they can bring a friend or family with them to participate. And we get to go see Japan with all of our friends. There's going to be hundreds of people going. And if you're curious, you're on the fence about going, I would say this is the year to go. Everyone's going to try to go to the first one. They may not go to the second one or third one if that happens, but this will probably be the only time you can go there, and you'll see tons and tons of people just walk around enjoying the most special event of the year, which is Pokemon Worlds.
It's kind of funny that they're holding Worlds in Tokyo this year. I wonder if because I play a lot of Pokemon Go, and they have their Global Go Fest. There's actually an event happening in Japan as well. Unfortunately, before I got off the fence and decided to actually go, they sold out the entire Pokemon Go Fest tickets, so I could not go to this one. But yeah, it's like hometown, right? Hometown, basically where it all started.
I think with that being said, maybe we switch over to the next topic, the personal card feature. I think this is becoming a fan favorite. How much can we spice it up, and how much can we show you guys some of the heat that we got going on?
I want to see that Illustrator that you're consigned. Do you have that on you?
The Illustrator? Oh, dude, if I had that on me, man, I'd need a bodyguard and like maybe two. No, that's actually with the owner right now. So
all right, you go first. You go first.
Me go first?
Yeah, I went first last week.
God. Oh my gosh. So I always like to get something special. You guys know I love error cards, and I'm sorry every week's just gonna be an error card. Like I could do that to infinity. Okay. But I made a deal with a very, very special friend of mine, Delay Bird Deals, a couple weeks ago, and he sold me some gold border first edition base cards. And so the gold border applies for Shadowless and first edition. It's where there's a very sort of like almost like a gold hue where the color is a little off and it looks really, really weird. Anyway, this is what one of the cards looks like. It's graded PSA 9, but you can just see how gold that is right there.
Yeah, it's really deep.
It's a coughing. And then I will show you another card here, a Diglett, and you can just see how gold that is. It's just crazy how that card looks, which if you see any other Diglett side by side, I mean, it's so bold when it comes to the text at the top. But if you look at both of these, I mean, they're very, very rare. I feel like I see 1 in 1,000, and I ask people to look for them for me all the time, and they just don't come up.
Do you think that they'll ever get a qualifier?
They probably deserve some sort of like print defect or something, because clearly these aren't the way they should be. And when you look at them like under like a magnifying glass, you can see that clearly there's something going on with the ink. Clearly, like this happened, and there's other cards that are affected. There's some that are more saturated than others, and so it would be cool to do something in the future, but it's hard to quantify.
Yeah. Are there any other like in kind of the same veins of like the border being a little bit different in terms of error cards other than this like deep gold? Like are there any other color variations?
This is special to first edition base and shadowless base with just the gold border. I
Mhm.
do see like some Neo Gen, Neo Revelation cards that have a very bright gold border. Where if you look, like there's some reaps I've seen where the border is just so yellow. I'm like, man, that looks like a gold border. Then you look at it and you're like, okay, that's just a really bright, thick yellow. Whereas this is almost like it's so hard to see, but it's almost like a bunch of little dots, and like it's not like a pure color. It's not just one clean color. It's like this mix of like, okay, clearly something was going on. These came out super gold, kind of cool, but like it's, to me, it's special to first edition base for this era.
Awesome. One of these days, Zach will not bring an error card. We promise you. Eventually,
Maybe.
I can't hold his arm to it, but eventually, laws of probability states that eventually he will bring something that's not an error card.
I don't know. Infinity's a long time, but Infinity's possible. So I love the error cards, Tetra. I hear you love the heat. So
I was able to actually plan in advance this week. So I know that last week we talked about the difficulty of importing cards from Japan and sending them through middleman service and then sending them to grade. And this kind of card encompasses all of those difficult processes. So this is the 2009 Wonder Platinum. This is I guess you can call it a trophy card. It was awarded as a trophy card. And it's this was probably the biggest card that I've ever imported from Japan. I bought it on Macari, and it was sitting literally months on months on Macari, and no one was buying it at $4,000. And this was at the time when I was kind of just starting and dipping my toe into the Japanese promo market, and I was just like talking to people. I was like, you guys think, because I'm a big PSA 10 guy, and like when you import a card from Japan, there's no grading whatsoever. Like the person, like if once you commit to the buy and have it shipped to whatever middleman service for you, they will not tell you the condition of the card whatsoever. They basically said the card arrived and when do you want it, so they won't do a pre-grade for you for anything like that. So this is definitely the biggest card that I ever imported from Japan, and there's really no price. I can't give you a price on in terms of what the value of this card is right now. It's really cool because it has that has a Giratina altered form on the back of it, and it also has the Wonder Platinum because it's during the age of the Platinum age of the cards, and it's kind of intrinsically it's part like a 3 card set. You have the Mysterious Pearl, you have the Miracle Diamond, and at the top of the mountain you have the Wonder Platinum. All each one of those cards has a Pokemon kind of a silhouette in the background, and you were awarded them based on how far you went with the national championships at that stage. So Zach talked about the U.S. national championships that are being held in Columbus, Ohio this year. Back in the day when they were doing the national championships in Japan, this is the card that was awarded at that time. So it was nice to reconnect with this card. I haven't seen it in a very long time, so it was nice to see basically all the stuff that's going on with it. I also got a sneak peek at my key as well when I took a look at it, and they just hit you. It just hits you really. They hit different when you get to see them in person. They're just overall really fun. So yeah, that's what I decided to share this week.
Spoiler alert: Key may be coming up in a future podcast. Sounds like...
So maybe one day, if there's a reason to bust out the keys, maybe we will. But yeah, they're fun. They're fun.
But bust out the keys. Oh my gosh, what does that mean?
Yeah. Anyway, scrolls out, right? Scrolls out.
Sounds like you got more than one key. That's what it sounds like.
No, we just got one. All right. So wrap it up. Final segment of our podcast is viewer questions, and we actually have more that won this week, which is absolutely fantastic. As always, if you guys want your viewer questions, follow us on the social medias. We are everything. We are everywhere, basically. You can leave a comment on this video as well, but we also accept on Facebook as well as Instagram. And our first question comes from Cool Trainer Tony. If you guys started collecting again for absolutely nothing, what would be your first card set that you would go after? I'll let you start off with this, Zach.
I think that's such a good question because, like, what you're going to go after, like, you have to think about your goals and what you achieve in the hobby and sort of what brings you happiness, this and that. I think if I came into the hobby today and I had nothing, I feel like I would collect modern. And I think I would go after some of the most beautiful, like alt arts and things like that. Like I see that the people get sucked in, they're new and they love that they can go open this and pull it up. It would be so hard to like shy away from something you could just go buy today. But if I had all the knowledge that I have today and I could start from nothing, and let's say that I had the funds to go after it, and the goal is for the happiness piece too, I would probably build WotC first edition 9 hollows. I think they're tremendously like I think they're, I don't want to say undervalued because I don't want to give like investing advice here, but I think that they're a very good price for what they are and how rare they are. Like, how much does it cost for a booster box? How much does it cost to get a pack? How much does it cost to, get a card graded? And if there's so many ways you can do like a vault service or this or that, where you can reduce sort of your transaction costs with different things. Like, I think WotC 9s are tremendous value. Now, if you wanted to chase sort of the biggest things and you're trying to get something super long-term and you had the funds, I think getting an Illustrator is kind of a staple. Like, if you take like the Logan Paul approach, like he's only getting a couple things, he's getting the best of the best. I think that's a very solid approach for any hobby. But once you start diving down, it's harder to justify the different things. So long story short, if it's me, probably WotC first at Hollow 9s. If I'm new to the hobby, I'm probably getting sucked into modern.
Searching. All right. Sorry, I was fiddling around in the back because I actually have a bonus card here that
Bonus.
was in so, which is cool. I can show this off as well, just because I want to give props to my wife. So my wife actually, for my birthday, she got this kind of little chest engraved for me. It has a Pikachu in the top. It has my logo on the very top. It's mostly just to hold screen protectors for cell phones now, because I drop my phone all the time, so I always need like all the screen protectors. So it's mostly just holding screen protectors. But inside of there is tucked away was actually an unlimited PSA 9 Charizard, which is really cool because like logistically keeping PSA like a first edition PSA 910 Charizard on your desk is probably not the greatest of ideas, right? So I bought like the trio set and PSA 9 unlimited just so I could keep them on my desk, and I forgot this was there. But my basically, to answer Tony's question, it's probably like I was thinking exactly the same line as Zach was doing. I would probably, if I had, I think for the normal people, like the vast majority of people, a full PSA 10 set of first edition hollows is probably not feasible. So I definitely would probably start at like the PSA 9 route, and with the big stretch goal would, at the most expensive card would be the PSA 9 first edition Charizard. But if I was like baseline starting off, I would honestly, I just buy cards and do a binder. In a lot of ways, binders are kind of there's just something that hits different, being able to look into a binder and just seeing all the cards at once. You don't have, they're very easy to store. You don't have to flip through slabs. They're readily available. You can buy, especially if you can get like really lower end grade cards where the majority of the damage is in the back, such as whitening or like a dent somewhere that doesn't really affect like the front surface area of the card. They just look so amazing just inside of a binder. So it would be, I would do like Zach, start with first edition. You start with base, fossil, jungle. It's basically exactly what I did in this hobby, because those cards were the most important ones to me, with the original 151. And based on how much money I had, it would either be a PSA 9 full set or just a binder set, which is perfectly fine as well.
So you're saying business in the front, party in the back? Is that the way to describe those cards?
Exactly. The Charizard got too rambunctious, and he has a gigantic dent in his back. So, but no one can see it because it's in a binder.
Gosh, there's probably like 20 more minutes of content we could do just on that topic alone. But let's save it for next week.
Dented the PSA 10 first edition Charizards that have dents on their back, and the seller refuses to show back pictures. Yeah, I think we've lived through that. We lived through that as well. But anyways, let's move into the next topic.
No comment. So the JWL 332, the Jewel, that's what I'm reading that as on YouTube. What are your thoughts on Japanese Worlds promos? Absolutely stonking. Why are the Japanese ones doing better than stamped ones? Are the Japanese ones fair price and the stamped finalists, semifinalists, etc., underpriced, or vice versa? What do you think, Tetra?
You go first.
Me first?
You
so
first.
I think the Japanese cards taking off has a lot to do with the Japanese sort of card market exploding in general, and people trying to see like what's valuable, what are people chasing. So like for example, like when Jeremy Padawar, I'm gonna mess his name up, started going after trainer deck A and B cards, and he started building the earliest sets, and that he saw value there, and he saw that, hey, I think these are really valuable. I'm going to grow these. I'm going to build these sets. So I think Japanese card collectors as well, when they're looking at all the things you can collect Japanese, you have some trophy cards, you have some modern, but Worlds cards are pretty exclusive. You only get them by going to the event, and the Japanese one is sort of in the native language. Like, yes, we collect English cards. Yes, we go to wherever we may go to open and buy, but it's a Japanese card game. Like, the native language is Japanese. Everything in English is translated over. So if you want kind of the home country, the native language, it's going to be the Japanese. And with that collector, that market exploding and everyone trying to get something cool, it's just made them go up across the board. Now, why aren't all the other languages just as much? Why aren't the Dutch collectors and German collectors and everyone else just chasing after their cards too? I don't know, guys. You got to come out and represent. You got to start buying your own country's cards.
Why do you guys hate Korea? What's wrong with Korean Pokemon cards, right?
They're still into K-pop, I hear.
So what Zach was saying is like absolutely, like I wholeheartedly agree with everything that he said. We talked about it earlier, like Poncho Pika's stonking, Mario Pika's stonking, and those are readily available promos that are extremely easy to grade. But when you add like just a tiny bit of limited availability when we talk about these world promo cards, it adds an entire new element to everything that just makes it a lot, if they're not that basic laws of economic supply and demand. Less supply, more demand, you gotta see these fluctuating prices, and you have to all understand like a lot of money in terms of quote unquote investors are coming for Asian markets, most notably China, and for reasons that we can't discuss. We're not Chinese investors. We're not Chinese Pokemon collection buyers. They just prefer the Japanese cards over the English ones for their various reasons. So yeah, that's probably why there's such a huge price discrepancy from the world cards of English versus Japanese.
So PokeScarce on IG asked the question, if you had to take 3 Pokemon to battle, who would you pick? And what's interesting is I see Tetra as being the Pokemon Go aficionado and playing all the time. And I sort of got back into it recently. So when I'm thinking about who I'm battling with, I'm saying Tyranitar. I'm saying Primal Groudon, shiny Primal Groudon with the 6,000 CP. And then just Gyarados, because I love Gyarados. And that bite is pretty effective.
No, that's not a good Pokemon Go team for Master League. Don't listen to Zach. You want your Mewtwo's, your Kyogres, and your Dialgos. Or your Zacians. That's a solid Pokemon Go Master League team. But anyways, so let's go over your like if you're outside of Pokemon Go, what would you take into battle?
Outside of Pokemon Go, I feel like everyone wants me to say Jolteon, but I wouldn't hurt a Jolteon ever. Like that would just be it'd be blasphemy. It'd just be horrible. Jolteon's at home playing with the EVs, trying to convince them to turn into Jolteons, all those things. Man, 3 outside, like if I'm in like real life and I get to actually see them battle, like I think seeing an Alakazam would be pretty cool, because I would not want to battle against an Alakazam. Oh man, it has to be Kanto Pokemon. Oh man, this is hard. I'll say Alakazam for now, and I'll pause for the other 2.
Yeah, it's a tough call when you talk about so many generations of Pokemon. I think that like just go through my favorites. I'm very basic. I definitely have a Charizard on my team just because Charizard can do so many things. It's one of those Pokemon. It can do Mega Evolution. It can do VMAX Evolution. So you kind of keep your options open in terms of like depending on what region you are. I've always been a huge Lucario fan, even though the typing is not great, but I just love the Pokemon Lucario. So you have your fighting and your steel type. And for some reason, I feel like you would need like some sort of water type as well. So I think just because 150, obviously Blastoise is always a safe bet. Um, I played the games, the original start with the original starters. I always played with either Charmander or Squirtle. They're just some of the best designed Pokemons. That Sugimori design. Blastoise literally has hydro cannons coming up its back, and then Charizard is literally a flying dragon. So I don't know. You can't get much better than that. You can't.
Did you just pick Charizard and Blastoise as part of your top three?
Yeah. Well, you can't stop me. I threw in another gen Pokemon. I threw in a Lucario in there just for fan purposes. But yeah.
So the riots don't occur. I see. I think I'd probably pick Alakazam and then Lapras. For whatever reason, I always liked Lapras in the Elite Four. It just had the beam. I always had Pidgeotto on my team, or Pidgeot on my team as well. But it's so hard to pick. It's like I'd probably pick those. I'd probably pick Pidgeot, Lapras, and Alakazam, which is probably a horrible team to battle against. But if I get to watch it play, like I think that'd be sick. So
Yeah. All right. Our last question comes from Campy's Cards, our resident we're talking about flippers before. His literal logo for his company is a dolphin. I'm still buying. He asked Tetra, are you gonna start buying cards again? I'm keeping my eye on things, of things that I'm interested in. There's a bunch of cards that like the special delivery Pikachu Canada version. I've been keeping my eye on the prices for those. The delivery one for the UK with the Charizards. I'm really into staff cards. Oh, like really, I love. For some reason, I have this like inherent draw to staff cards. So I'm really glad that they've started reprinting those again. Just keeping an eye on the markets. I haven't bought anything recently. Surprise, surprise! I'm trying to wait it out to get a price that I agree with, as Zach knows also well. But I think that I talked about it before. I've reached a lot of the goals that I set out for myself, and I just don't want to buy now, just for the sake of buying now. I'm not insane like Zach, who literally has to have every version of WotC known to on the face of this earth. I'm happy. I'm at a very happy point of my collection. I just enjoy sharing. Now I'm just at the point of like keeping an eye on things, and enjoying talking about the hobby with people like Zach and other members of the community.
I'm surprised you didn't say WotC was the Coast Cards in there.
No,
been pitching the WotC all podcast. I figured you'd say something like that.
What about you? What are you buying right now? I know the question was geared towards me, but like, if without giving too much away, like, obviously you're still trying to buy variations of cards that a lot of people don't see, but like, let's try to look beyond that. Is there anything like you goal wise you are trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I might have mentioned on the first podcast. If you missed that podcast, go watch it right now. But no, I've around 80% of the commons, uncommons for the WotC era. So I completed the non-holo rares, completed the holographic cards, first edition unlimited. So I'm still chasing the first edition and unlimited commons and uncommons. And again, not really an investment purpose behind all that. It's just, I just want to collect the sets. It's a huge goal I've had for a long time. It just takes time to buy commons and uncommons. Yes, you go on eBay and buy them for $150 each. But why not just grade them yourself, pay the $15 grading fee or the $12, hopefully at some point. I hope PSA prices go down. But at some point, it's just like, you just want to kind of finish that. And if I could finish that goal this year or even next year, I think that'd be an incredible achievement. So it's slow and steady.
One of the people that when I was collecting, like, because during that time, like, no one was really grading uncommons and commons whatsoever, especially around like the Neo era. One of the people who filled out my collection a lot was actually Pokerev, a fellow Nick, because he had just for some reason he went on like a a breaking of like tons of sealed product, and he was literally grading everything. He was opening like boxes that you should not be opening these days, but at that time it was kind of acceptable, and he was literally grading everything, and I was just buying en masse for him. I finished basically WotC and a lot of Neo cards from that era based on him breaking a ton of sealed product. Expedition in terms of WotC is definitely a daunting task. There are how many cards there are in Expedition? 600?
165 non-holo cards. Then there's 159 reverse hollows and 4 box toppers.
Yeah, Expedition by far in terms of WotC is the biggest. It's the biggest set, right? By far.
I think Aquapolis is a little bit bigger. It has 148 cards. Well, actually, you might be. I thought Aquapolis was bigger than Expedition, but now I'm thinking.
No, I'm pretty sure Expedition is definitely the bigger of the two because I was when I was collecting, I was like, man, I need to buy 2 cases for Expedition.
So I think Aquapolis. So at Expedition, what they did is the cards 1 through 32 were hollows, and the non-hollows started at 33. What they did for Aquapolis is 1 through 144 are non-hollows, and they create a separate hollow set. Remember the H1, H through 32?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you had 144 plus the crystals, then you had the reverses, then you had the hollows on top of that. It was like this weird, because they had the issue with the duplicating the rares and the hollows. Like the reverses like look the exact same except for a card number. And it's like, oh, you got to collect the same card twice. So it's really, really close. Long story short, they're both really hard to complete.
Expedition was super annoying because of that. The fact that they double printed the rares, but with separate numbers, and those are reversed for those as well. It's just it made collecting.
I remember talking to Nick back when he was cracking boxes and stuff, and he had a full-time job at the same time. And I was like, how do you pick what to grade? Like I always go through and only grade the stuff that looked like 10s. And he said, dude, I don't have the time. I just send it all. So he would open a box and send the entire box to get graded. Who does that?
Well, minimum most likely it's gonna be a 9, right? So you might get like, and who are we to judge his business practices, right? Because he's done extremely well for himself on the content creator side as well as the store side. I remember he was selling he had like the Masters WotC Charizard set on eBay. I don't know if he still has that. Does he still have that listing up?
I know he had the Master Booster Box collection that he never really wanted to sell, but it was like, he had to keep raising the price. Because I remember one time I was like, hey, man, I think the price is actually fair value. And then he like had to, because he doesn't want to sell, he just want to show it off.
Yeah.
But
what people put stuff on eBay that they don't actually want to sell?
Oh my gosh. Views, stonks.
But anyways, thank you. That's it for viewer questions. I think that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us for episode 3 of the Next Gen TCG podcast. Hopefully we didn't run too long, and then we will be back next week once again. Record on Monday, post on Wednesday. Any new stuff on the way we will talk about. If you guys have your viewer questions, leave them in the comment box below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and Zach will say goodbye to you guys.
See you guys. Thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button. Show some support. Can't wait to do this every week going forward. Love you guys. Like floor to ceiling windows. It's like right across the street from like the hockey arena. So I'd probably get like Predators season tickets, and I just go watch hockey anytime.
Cool. Well, maybe I'll come down when the Leafs play the Predators.
Oh, when you have a reason to come down and watch hockey, not for me, but just
Oh, it's kind of you double dip, right? You double dip.